Daniel Carter sat in the same chair he had occupied for 12 years. It was placed at the far end of the great council chamber, away from the central platform where the elder races gathered. The chair was smaller than the others. This was not an accident. The Galactic Sovereignty Council had existed for 9,000 years before humanity discovered faster-than-light travel. They had built empires when humans still lived in caves. They had mapped the stars while Earth was covered in ice. They had forgotten more history than humanity had ever recorded. And they never let anyone forget it. Daniel watched as High Chancellor rose to speak. He was tall and elegant, with silver skin that caught the light of the chamber's floating orbs. His voice carried the weight of ancient authority. "We will now hear from the human delegation," said. The way he pronounced the word human made it sound like something unpleasant he had stepped in. Daniel stood and walked to the speaking platform. He felt the eyes of 100 delegates upon him. Some looked bored, others looked amused, none looked respectful. "The human fleet has completed defensive upgrades to stations along the outer reach," Daniel began. "We have also increased patrol routes by 40%. Our analysts believe this will reduce pirate activity by—" "Yes, yes," interrupted Counselor of the Assembly. His rocky face twisted into what might have been a smile. "The humans and their patrols, always so eager to play soldier." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Daniel felt his jaw tighten but kept his voice steady. "The outer reach borders space. Our patrols have intercepted 17 scout ships in the past month alone. The swarm is testing our defenses." "They are contained," said Counselor of the Dominion. She did not bother to look at Daniel as she spoke. "They have been quiet for decades. Your people see threats everywhere because you are young and frightened." "With respect, Counselor, our intelligence suggests—" "Your intelligence," cut him off, "comes from a species that discovered space travel 63 years ago. Forgive me if I trust the wisdom of civilizations that have watched empires rise and fall for." Daniel took a breath. He had learned to take many breaths in this chamber. "I am simply reporting what our sensors have detected. The swarm is moving. Whether you believe me or not does not change what is happening." High Chancellor raised a hand and the chamber fell silent. "Ambassador Carter, your concerns are noted. The Council will consider them in due time. You may return to your seat." Daniel walked back to his small chair at the edge of the room. He had made this walk many times before. Each time, it felt a little longer. The session continued for another 4 hours. Trade agreements were discussed. Territorial disputes were mediated. Cultural exchanges were planned. Through all of it, humanity was mentioned only twice, both times as an afterthought. When the session ended, Daniel did not return to the embassy. Instead, he walked through the streets of the council capital, a massive city that floated among the stars. Ships of every design passed overhead. Beings of every shape moved around him. The galaxy was vast and ancient and full of wonders. And it had no place for his kind. He thought about the message he had received that morning from Admiral Cole. The Admiral had sent a recording of the Battle of Sigma 7, fought just 3 years ago. Daniel remembered it well. They had broken through the outer defenses and threatened to overwhelm 4 colony worlds. The Council had debated for 6 days about how to respond. Cole had not waited for their decision. He had taken the human fleet into the breach and held the line for 9 days. 47 ships lost, 8,000 dead. When the Council finally sent reinforcements, they found humans still fighting, still dying, still holding. The Council had thanked them by passing a resolution that praised all forces involved in the successful defense. Humanity was not mentioned by name. Daniel also thought about Dr. Laura. When the plague swept through their outer colonies, the elder races had panicked. Their medicine was advanced but specialized. They had never seen anything like the disease that was killing thousands each day. Laura was a human doctor with a small team and limited resources. She had worked for 11 days without sleep, analyzing the pathogen, testing treatments, and finally synthesizing a cure. She had saved an estimated 2 million lives. The council had sent a formal note of appreciation. Laura had framed it and hung it on her office wall as a reminder of what gratitude looked like from beings who considered themselves superior. And there was the mining disaster. When their deep space stations collapsed due to equipment failures, human rescue teams had been the first to respond. They had pulled survivors from the wreckage for 3 weeks. 17 human rescue workers had died in the effort. They had not attended their funerals. Daniel reached the edge of the floating city and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 8 billion humans lived on a small blue planet. They had built something beautiful in their short time among the stars. They had proven themselves again and again. And still, it was never enough. His communicator beeped. It was a message from Earth, directly from President. She wanted to speak with him immediately. Her tone was different from usual. There was something in her voice he had never heard before. It sounded like a decision. Daniel returned to the embassy and sealed himself in the secure communications room. The president's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear and focused. "Daniel," she said, "I have been reading your reports, all of them going back 12 years. "Yes, ma'am. We have given everything to this council. Our technology, our soldiers, our doctors, our engineers, we have bled for them, we have died for them." She paused. "And what have they given us?" Daniel did not answer. They both knew the truth. "I have spoken with the Joint Chiefs. I have spoken with the Senate. I have spoken with leaders from every nation on Earth." The president leaned forward. "We are done, Daniel. We are leaving." The words hung in the air between them. Daniel felt something shift inside him, something that had been holding on for far too long. "When?" he asked. 3 months. We will withdraw everything. Ships, personnel, technology, trade, all of it. We will seal our borders and go dark. They will not understand." "No," the president agreed. "They will not, and that is exactly the point." She looked at him with something that might have been sadness or might have been relief. "Come home, Daniel. Your work there is finished." He ended the call and sat alone in the darkness. For 12 years, he had tried to build bridges. For 12 years, he had smiled through insults and worked through dismissals. Now he would do something else. He would say goodbye. The first sign came so quietly that no one noticed. Counselor sent a routine message to the human embassy requesting updated patrol schedules for the outer reach. The response came back automated, a simple text that read, "Currently unavailable." She thought nothing of it. Humans were always busy with something. They moved too fast, talked too much, and worried about everything. It was exhausting just watching them. But the automated responses kept coming. 1 week passed. Then 2. The human delegation stopped attending council sessions. Their seats remained empty, gathering dust that the cleaning drones did not bother to remove. High Chancellor noticed during a budget discussion. He looked at the empty human chairs and frowned. "Has anyone heard from Ambassador Carter?" The chamber fell silent. No one had. Sent a formal inquiry to Earth. 3 days later, he received a reply consisting of 4 words, "No comment at this time." In the border systems, things began to change. Captain Torres of the USS Endurance received orders from Earth Command. The message was short and clear. All human vessels were to return to Sol immediately. No exceptions. No delays. His first officer, a woman named Kelly Grant, read the orders twice before looking up at him. "Sir, we are in the middle of a joint patrol with the cruiser. We cannot just leave." "We can," Torres said, "and we will. But the can handle their own space." Torres took the command chair and began entering navigation coordinates. "Set course for Earth, maximum speed." The Endurance broke formation without a word of explanation. The captain sent 17 hails demanding to know what was happening. Tors did not answer a single one. Across the galaxy, the same scene repeated itself. Human ships abandoned their posts. Human soldiers left Allied bases. Human merchants canceled contracts and sailed for home. On Research Station, Dr. Price had spent 8 years studying alien biology alongside the greatest scientists in the galaxy. She had made discoveries that would have been impossible on Earth. She had built friendships that crossed species boundaries. None of that mattered anymore. She stood in her laboratory, watching as her assistant packed the last of their equipment. A colleague named entered the room, his long face twisted with confusion. "What is happening? Why are you leaving?" She did not look at him. "Orders from home." "But your research, our project, we are so close to a breakthrough." "I know." Stepped closer. "Then why? What could possibly be so important that you would abandon everything we have built together?" Finally turned to face him. There was something cold in her eyes that had never seen before. "Do you remember last year, when I presented our findings to the Science Council?" "Of course, it was a great honor." "An honor," she laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Your council spent 2 hours explaining how my methodology was flawed because humans think differently than advanced species. They said my contributions were valuable despite my limitations. Despite. They used that word 11 times. I counted." Said nothing. He remembered the presentation. He had thought nothing of the council's comments at the time. It was simply how things were. "You never wanted to learn from us," said. "You only wanted to watch us try to keep up with you, and when we succeeded, you found ways to explain it away." She picked up her bag and walked toward the door. "Good luck with your breakthrough. I hope you find it without me." She left the station on the last transport to Earth. Behind her, years of work sat in databases that would be erased within the hour. Ambassador Daniel Carter returned to the council chamber one final time. The room was full when he entered. Word had spread that the humans were leaving, and everyone wanted to see what would happen next. He walked to the speaking platform without being invited. High Chancellor started to object, but stopped when he saw the look on Daniel's face. Daniel stood in silence for a long moment, looking at the beings who had dismissed him for 12 years. Then he spoke. "Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Sovereignty Council, effective immediately. We will honor no treaties, answer no calls, and offer no explanations. You have made your feelings clear. We have finally listened." The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted questions and demands. Some laughed, thinking it was a joke. Others looked worried for the first time in their long lives. Daniel did not wait for them to finish. He turned and walked out of the chamber, out of the building, and out of the life he had known. Behind him, the doors sealed shut with a sound that echoed through the halls. Within 24 hours, the human embassy was empty. Within 48 hours, the last human ship had left Council space. Within 72 hours, Earth's warp gates went dark, and the Sol system vanished from every navigation chart in the galaxy. Counselor of the Assembly tried to joke about it. "Good riddance to the children. Now the adults can work in peace." A few delegates laughed, most did not. High Chancellor returned to his private chambers and sat alone in the darkness. He thought about the empty chairs in the council chamber. He thought about the patrol routes that no longer had human ships. He thought about the research stations that had gone silent and the trade routes that had been abandoned. For the first time in his very long life, he felt something he did not recognize. It took him several hours to realize it was fear. In the weeks that followed, the council tried to carry on as normal. Sessions were held, debates were conducted, resolutions were passed. But something was missing. The chamber felt emptier than the absent chairs could explain. The debates lacked their usual energy. Even the ancient rivalries between the elder races seemed less important somehow. Counselor found herself looking at the door during every session, half expecting a human delegate to walk through with another report about threats that no one wanted to hear. The door remained closed. On Earth, President addressed her people for the first time since the withdrawal. She stood before the cameras with Admiral Cole and Dr. Laura at her side. For 63 years, we have tried to be good neighbors to the galaxy. We have shared our knowledge. We have defended those who could not defend themselves. We have asked for nothing but respect. She paused, letting the words settle. That respect was never given, so we have come home. The people of Earth listened in silence. There were no protests. There were no demands to reconsider. After 6 decades of being treated as lesser beings, humanity had finally had enough. We will not close our doors forever, the president continued, but we will not open them again until we are asked, properly, with the respect we have earned 1,000 times over. She looked directly into the camera, and for a moment, it felt like she was speaking to every being in the galaxy. We are not children, we never were, and when you finally understand that, you know where to find us. The broadcast ended. The stars continued to shine, and somewhere in the darkness between worlds, the swarm began to move. The first year without humanity was supposed to prove that the galaxy had never needed them at all. High Chancellor told himself this every morning when he woke. He repeated it during council sessions when delegates asked uncomfortable questions. He whispered it at night when he could not sleep. The galaxy had existed for billions of years before humans discovered fire. It would exist for billions more after they were forgotten. Their departure was nothing more than a minor inconvenience, a small adjustment in the great flow of galactic civilization. This is what believed. This is what he needed to believe. Reality had other plans. The food shortages began within 3 months. Human merchants had quietly handled most of the perishable goods trade between systems. Their ships were faster, their routes more efficient, and their crews more willing to travel through dangerous space. No one had noticed because no one had bothered to look. There was the first to feel the impact. Their agricultural systems had failed centuries ago, replaced by imports from a dozen different worlds. When the shipments stopped, their storage reserves lasted exactly 47 days. Counselors sent urgent requests to every trading guild in the galaxy. Most could not help. They did not have enough ships, enough crews, or enough courage to make the long runs through pirate territory. Territory that human patrols had once kept safe. The famine spread slowly at first, then faster. Citizens began leaving their cities to search for food in the wilderness of their own world. Some survived, many did not. Stopped making jokes about the humans after that. The drift gates were the next crisis. These ancient structures had allowed faster-than-light travel for species that had not yet developed their own technology. They had existed since before recorded history, built by a civilization so old that even its name had been forgotten. No one in the galaxy understood how they worked, no one except the humans. Earth's engineers had studied the gates for decades. They had written maintenance protocols, developed repair techniques, and trained specialists to keep the ancient machines running. When they left, they took all of that knowledge with them. Gate 17 failed 8 months after the withdrawal. It hung above Prime, the jewel of the Dominion, and one morning it simply stopped working. Ships that tried to enter the gate found themselves going nowhere. Trade routes that had functioned for thousands of years were suddenly useless. Counselor summoned the greatest engineers to examine the problem. They spent 6 weeks analyzing the gate systems. In the end, they had to admit what no one wanted to hear. They had no idea how to fix it. Traffic was rerouted through other gates, adding weeks to journeys that had once taken hours. The delays rippled through the economy like waves in a pond. Prices rose, supplies dwindled. The comfortable life that they had known for centuries began to crumble at the edges. Tried to contact the human embassy. The building was empty. She sent messages to Earth's communication networks. They bounced back undelivered. She even tried to reach the Sol system directly, but the border defenses turned her ship away without a word. The humans were gone, and they intended to stay gone. In the outer reach, the pirates grew bold. For years, they had lurked in the shadows, afraid of the human patrols that swept through the region with ruthless efficiency. Admiral Cole had made it his personal mission to keep the trade lanes safe. His reputation alone had deterred most attacks. Now Cole was back on Earth, and the pirates knew it. Raiders struck convoy after convoy. Colony worlds that had relied on trade for survival found themselves cut off. Distress signals filled the communication channels, crying for help that never came. The Council tried to organize its own patrols. The fleet was powerful but slow, designed for grand battles rather than quick strikes. The preferred diplomacy to combat and had few warships to spare. They were too busy dealing with their famine to worry about distant colonies. By the end of the first year, the outer reach had become a lawless wasteland. Worlds that had once prospered under human protection fell to raiders, disease, or simple despair. And still, the Council refused to admit the truth. "We are experiencing temporary difficulties," High Chancellor announced during an emergency session. "These challenges are not related to the human withdrawal. They are coincidental." Counselor listened to his words and felt something break inside her. She had never liked the humans. She had found them loud and impatient and far too confident for such a young species. But she had also watched them fight at Sigma 7. She had seen Dr. Laura save her people from the plague. She had read the reports from the outer reach, where human soldiers had died protecting colonies that were not their own. The challenges were not coincidental, they were consequences. She stood and spoke without being recognized. "We should send an envoy to Earth. We should ask for their help." The chamber fell silent, stared at her as if she had suggested they all start breathing vacuum. "The humans left by choice," he said carefully. "If they wish to return, they may request to do so. We will not go begging to a species that abandoned its responsibilities." "They did not abandon anything," replied. "We pushed them away. Every day for 60 years, we told them they were not good enough, not old enough, not wise enough to stand beside us. And then we acted surprised when they finally believed us." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates nodded in agreement. Others looked away in shame. A few shouted that was a traitor to her own kind. Raised his hand for silence. "The Council's position is clear. Humanity made their choice. We will make ours." The vote was taken. The motion to send an envoy failed by a narrow margin. Returned to her seat and said nothing more. But she began to keep records, writing down everything that went wrong, everything the Council refused to see. She had a feeling that someday, someone would need to know the truth. Months passed. The situation grew worse. Reports arrived of something stirring in the deep darkness beyond the outer reach. Scout ships detected movement in systems that had been empty for centuries. Communication arrays picked up signals in a language that made listeners feel cold. The swarm was waking up. Received the intelligence reports and read them with growing horror. The swarm had been defeated 20 years ago at Sigma 7, but they had not been destroyed. They had retreated to their hive worlds to breed and build and wait. They had been waiting for the humans to leave. The High Chancellor locked himself in his chambers and tried to calculate how long the Council could hold against a full swarm invasion. The numbers were not encouraging. Without human patrols, they had no early warning network. Without human tactics, they had no battle plans that accounted for swarm behavior. Without human ships, they had no mobile strike forces to intercept the enemy before they reached populated systems. For the first time in his political career, considered admitting he had been wrong. Then he thought about what that would mean. The shame, the loss of status, the acknowledgement that a species of mammals from a tiny blue planet had been holding the galaxy together while everyone else congratulated themselves on their own superiority. He could not do it, not yet, perhaps not ever. So he did what politicians had always done throughout history. He looked for someone else to blame. And far away in the darkness between stars, the swarm continued to grow. They came without warning. The first attack struck the colony of New Haven at midnight local time. 20,000 civilians were sleeping when the swarm descended from the sky. By dawn, there were no survivors. The buildings were torn apart. The fields were burned. The bodies were taken for purposes that no one wanted to imagine. Counselor, who had once worked alongside Dr. Price, was among the dead. He had moved to New Haven after the research station closed, hoping to find a quiet life away from the politics of the council. He found only silence and teeth. 3 more colonies fell within the week. The fleet mobilized, but their ships were designed for elegance rather than war. They fought bravely and died quickly. High Chancellor called an emergency session of the council. The chamber was full, but the faces were pale and frightened. The arrogance that had filled the room for centuries was gone, replaced by something that looked very much like terror. "We must coordinate our defenses," said. His voice shook slightly and he hated himself for it. "The fleet will take the lead. They will provide ground forces. They will handle logistics and communications." Admiral of the Dominion stood. He was old even by standards, with battle scars that covered half his face. He had fought in wars that predated human civilization. "High Chancellor, I have reviewed our tactical options. None of them are good." He activated a holographic display that showed the council's territory. Red markers indicated swarm positions. There were far too many of them. "The enemy is advancing on multiple fronts. They are using strategies we have never seen before. It is as if they studied our weaknesses for years before attacking." "They did," said a quiet voice. Everyone turned to look at Counselor. She had not spoken in council sessions for months, choosing instead to watch and record. "The swarm has been watching us since Sigma 7, she continued. "They learned from that battle. They learned that the humans were the real threat. They learned to wait until the humans were gone." His eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" "I am not suggesting anything. I am stating facts." Stood and faced the council. 20 years ago, Admiral Cole held the line at Sigma 7 for 9 days with a fleet half the size of ours. He did it because humans fight differently than we do. They adapt. They improvise. They refuse to accept defeat even when the numbers say they should. She looked at the red markers on the display. "We do not fight like that. We follow protocols. We respect traditions. We do things the way they have always been done." She paused. "And that is why we are going to lose." Admiral did not argue. He could not. Everything she said was true. "What would you have us do?" demanded. "Beg the humans to save us." "Yes," said simply. "That is exactly what I would have us do." The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted and argued and accused each other of cowardice, called for order, but no one was listening anymore. The careful civilization that the council had built over was cracking under the pressure of fear. In the end, they voted to send a diplomatic ship to Earth, not because they wanted to, but because they had no other choice. The ship was called the Starlight. It was the finest vessel in the fleet, crewed by the most experienced diplomats the council could assemble. They carried messages of reconciliation, offers of alliance, and promises of change. They never reached Earth. The Sol system was protected by defenses that no one had ever seen before. Automated platforms surrounded the borders, armed with weapons that targeted the Starlight the moment it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. A message played on all frequencies. It was a human voice, calm and clear. "You are not welcome here. Turn back now." The diplomats tried to explain their mission. They begged for a chance to speak. They offered to surrender all weapons and shields as a sign of good faith. The message repeated, "You are not welcome here. Turn back now." The Starlight returned to council space with nothing to show for its journey. The diplomats reported that they had seen human ships in the distance, watching them but never approaching. The humans knew they were there. The humans simply did not care. High Chancellor decided to try a personal appeal. He recorded a message that took him 3 days to compose. He spoke of shared history, of mutual interests, of the bonds that should unite all civilized species against common threats. He spoke of the danger they posed not just to the Council, but to everyone. He even apologized, though the words seemed to stick in his throat. The message was transmitted to Earth through every available channel, waited for a response. None came. The war continued to go badly. The already weakened by famine fell after a siege that lasted 2 weeks. Counselor died defending the council chamber of his own world, finally proving that he had courage to match his pride. The fleet was shattered at the Battle of Crimson Nebula. Admiral went down with his flagship, giving orders until the moment his ship broke apart around him. Refugees flooded the remaining systems. Ships that had once carried trade goods now carried families fleeing the advancing swarm. The council capital, which had stood for 9,000 years, began to fill with the desperate and the displaced. Walked among the refugees, listening to their stories. A mother who had lost 3 children, a merchant who had watched his world burn, a soldier who could not stop shaking, even in his sleep. They all asked the same question: where were the humans? Had no answer. She knew only that Earth remained silent, its borders sealed, its people watching from behind defenses that no one could breach. She wondered what they were thinking. Were they pleased to see the council suffer? Were they planning to let the swarm consume everything before stepping in at the last moment? Or had they truly given up on the galaxy that had treated them so badly? She did not know, she could not know, and that uncertainty was perhaps the worst part of all. In his private chambers received daily reports of the war's progress. Each report was worse than the last: territory lost, ships destroyed, lives ended. He had led the council for 50 years. He had guided it through crises and conflicts that would have broken lesser leaders. He had always believed that wisdom and patience would triumph over any challenge. Now he was watching everything he had built crumble into dust. On a night when the sky was full of refugee ships, made a decision. He would go to Earth himself, not as a diplomat, not as a politician, but as a being who had nothing left to lose. He did not tell the council. He did not ask for permission. He simply took a small ship and flew toward the Sol system, knowing that he would probably be turned away like everyone else. But he had to try, for his people, for the galaxy, for all the years he had wasted believing that humanity did not matter. He had to try. The journey took 6 days. When he arrived at the border, the automated defenses targeted his ship immediately. "You are not welcome here. Turn back now." Took a deep breath and spoke into the communication system. "My name is High Chancellor of the Galactic Sovereignty Council. I come alone and unarmed. I am asking for an audience with your leaders." There was a long pause. Then a different voice came through the speakers. It was human, male, and very tired. "Chancellor, this is Earth Defense Command. You have exactly 60 seconds to explain why we should listen to you." Closed his eyes and spoke the truth. "Because I was wrong, because we were all wrong, and because my people are dying while yours stay safe behind these borders." He paused. "Please, I do not know what else to say." The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Then the voice returned. "Proceed to the following coordinates. You will be met by an escort. Do not deviate from the prescribed course." Felt something wet on his face. He realized he was crying. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." He flew toward the coordinates, toward Earth, toward the only hope his galaxy had left. Had seen many worlds in his long life, but Earth was different from all of them. The planet was small compared to the grand capitals of the elder races. Its cities were crowded and chaotic, its people loud and busy. There was no elegance in the way they built their structures, no ancient tradition guiding their designs. But there was something else, an energy, a sense of purpose, a feeling that every person on this world was moving toward something greater than themselves. Understood now why humanity had accomplished so much in such a short time. They did not wait for permission. They did not follow paths laid down by their ancestors. They simply saw what needed to be done and did it. The human escorts brought him to a building in what had once been Washington, D.C. It was old by human standards, built of white stone and surrounded by monuments to leaders who had died centuries ago. Flags flew in the wind, and citizens walked freely on the streets below. President Ben Taylor waited for him on the steps. The human leader was not what it expected. He was not tall or imposing. His hair had gone gray, and his face was lined with age. He wore simple clothes without decoration or rank insignia. But his eyes held something that had seen in only a handful of beings throughout his long life. Certainty. Not arrogance, not pride, but genuine certainty about who he was and what he believed. Chancellor Taylor said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "You have come a long way." Stepped forward on legs that felt weak. He had prepared many speeches during the journey, elegant words crafted to persuade and negotiate. Now, standing before this human, all of those words seemed useless. "I came to ask for help," he said. "I came because my people are dying and we cannot save them alone." Taylor nodded slowly. "I know, we have been watching." "Then why did you not come? Why did you let so many die while you hid behind your borders?" The question came out sharper than intended. He saw Taylor's expression flicker, but the human did not seem offended. "We did not hide," Taylor said. "We waited. There is a difference." "Waited for what?" "For you," Taylor gestured toward the building. "Come inside, Chancellor. We have much to discuss." They walked through halls filled with history. Portraits of human leaders lined the walls, each one representing a different era, a different struggle. Saw faces of every color and background, men and women who had guided their species through wars and disasters and triumphs. Such a short history, and yet they had done so much with it. They reached a room with windows that looked out over the city. Taylor sat in a simple chair and waited for it to do the same. 63 years, Taylor began. That is how long humanity has been part of the galactic community. In that time, we have saved 3 civilizations from destruction. We have cured plagues, repaired ancient technology, and defended borders that were not our own. We have asked for nothing in return except to be treated as equals. Said nothing, there was nothing to say. Instead, you treated us as children. You mocked our culture, dismissed our contributions, and reminded us constantly that we were young and foolish. Taylor leaned forward. Your council debated for 6 days while my people died at Sigma 7. 6 days, Chancellor. 8,000 humans went into the darkness so that your colonies could survive, and your council could not even be bothered to say thank you. The words hit like physical blows. He wanted to defend himself, to explain that he had not meant for things to be that way, but he knew the truth. He had been there for all of it. He had participated in all of it. "I was wrong," he said. The words came hard, but they came. "We were all wrong. We took everything you offered and gave nothing in return. We were arrogant and blind and foolish." Taylor studied him for a long moment. "And now? Now I am here. Not as a chancellor, not as a representative of ancient civilizations, but as a being who has failed his people and does not know how to save them." Felt the last of his pride crumble away. "I am asking you, as one leader to another, to help us, not because we deserve it, we do not, but because the swarm will not stop with us. Eventually, they will come for you too." Taylor stood and walked to the window. Outside, ships were rising into the sky, joining formations that stretched toward the stars. Factories hummed with production. Soldiers marched toward transports. "We have been preparing for 4 years," Taylor said. The moment we knew the swarm would attack. We knew the council would fall. We knew, eventually, someone would come to this building and say the words you just said. He turned to face. We could have let you fail. We could have watched from safety while your civilizations burned. Some of my advisors recommended exactly that. He paused. But that is not who we are. It has never been who we are. Felt hope stir in his chest for the first time in years. Then you will help us. We always would have, Taylor said. You just never asked. He pressed a button on his desk. A door opened, and a woman in military uniform entered the room. She was human, with dark hair and sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Admiral, Taylor said, she will be commanding our forces. Saluted briefly, then turned to Chancellor, we have monitored the swarm's movement since they began their offensive. We know their patterns, their weaknesses, and their command structure. We have been waiting for the right moment to strike. The right moment. Yes, allowed herself a small smile. The moment when the council was ready to fight alongside us instead of expecting us to fight for them. The words stung but accepted them. He had earned nothing less. What do you need from us? He asked. Everything you have left, replied. Every ship, every soldier, every resource. This will not be like Sigma 7, where humans held the line while the council debated. This time, we fight together or we fall together. Thought of the broken fleets, the scattered armies, the desperate refugees. It was not much, but it was something. You will have it, he promised. Whatever we have left, it is yours to command. Taylor nodded and extended his hand. Looked at it for a moment, remembering how the council had once dismissed human gestures as primitive and unsophisticated. He took the hand and shook it firmly. The war that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human fleets struck at the swarm's supply lines while warships held defensive positions. Ground forces, reduced but determined, fought alongside human marines in battles across a dozen worlds. Coordinators worked with human strategists to develop tactics that combined ancient wisdom with human innovation. Admiral became a legend. She led from the front, her flagship always at the heart of the fighting. She lost ships and soldiers and friends, but she never stopped pushing forward. The swarm fought back with everything they had. They adapted, evolved, and threw wave after wave against the Allied forces. There were defeats and retreats and moments when it seemed like all was lost. But the humans did not give up. They never gave up. Counselor fought in the final battle, commanding a small group of volunteers who had chosen to stand with humanity. She watched as the swarm's last hive ship was destroyed, its death spreading silence across 1,000,000 communication channels. When it was over, she stood on the bridge of a human carrier and looked out at the stars. Daniel Carter, the ambassador who had walked out of the council chamber 4 years ago, stood beside her. What happens now? She asked. Now we rebuild, Carter said, together. The peace that followed was difficult. Old wounds did not heal quickly, and old habits were hard to break. There were arguments and disagreements and moments when the alliance seemed ready to fall apart. But something had changed. The elder races had learned humility, the humans had learned patience, and everyone had learned that survival meant more than just not dying. A new council was formed. Humanity was offered the highest seat, recognition of their role in saving the galaxy. They declined. Daniel Carter gave the final answer. We will be your partners, we will be your allies, but never again will we be your servants. We fought beside you, not for you. That is how it must remain. The galaxy accepted. They had no choice, and perhaps for the first time they understood. Years later would tell the story to her. She would speak of the dark times and the war and the price that had been paid for arrogance and pride. But mostly, she would speak of the humans, the young species that had proven themselves not by demanding respect, but by earning it, the people who had watched the galaxy burn and still chosen to help. They could have let us fall, she would say. They had every right to, but they came back for us. They saved us. Her would ask why, and would smile and give the only answer that mattered. Because that is who they are. In the end, the galaxy had not needed humanity to survive. It had needed humanity to remember what survival was worth. And humanity, as always, had been ready to teach.